Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Let us offer our most humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Krishna Dvaipayan Vyasadeva, at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and at the lotus feet of Sri Arjuna and all the Lord's eternal associates. Let us also offer our most humble respects to the book Bhagavad-gītā As It Is, and at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. May they bless us so that we are able to receive these wonderful instructions from the Supreme Lord, as did Arjuna, his friend and devotee. So we are reading from chapter 11, verse 34. droṇaṁ cha bhīṣmam cha jayadratham cha droṇam cha bhīṣmam cha jayadrathaṁ cha karṇam tathānyān api yodha-vīrān karṇam tathānyam api yodha-vīrān mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi ma vyathiṣṭhā mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi ma vyathiṣṭhā yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān droṇam cha bhīṣmam cha jayadratham cha karṇam tathānyam api yodha-vīrān mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi ma vyathiṣṭhā yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān droṇam cha bhīṣmam cha jayadratham cha karṇam tathānyān api yodha-vīrān mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi ma vyathiṣṭhā
vyathiṣṭhā
yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān
yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān
yodha-vīrān sapatnān
droṇam cha bhīṣmaṁ cha jayadratham cha
droṇam cha
droṇam
bhīṣmaṁ cha jayadratham cha
jayadratham cha
karṇam tathānyān api yodha-vīrān
karṇam tathānapi
tathānyān
yodha-vīrān
yodha-vīrān
mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi vyathiṣṭhā
mayā hatāṁs tvam
maya
jahi vyathiṣṭhā
tvam vyathiṣṭhā
yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān.
yudhyasva jetāsi
yudhyasva
raṇe
jetāsi
sapatnān
raṇe sapatnān.
I read, please.
Synonyms: droṇaṁ cha, also droṇa; bhīṣmam cha, also bhīṣma; jayadratham cha, also jayadratha; karṇam, karṇa; tathā, also; anyān, others; api, certainly; yodha-vīrān, great warriors; mayā, by me; hatān, already killed; tvam, you; jahi, destroy; ma, do not; vyathiṣṭhā, be disturbed; yudhyasva, just fight; jetāsi, you will conquer; raṇe, in the fight; sapatnān, enemies. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Droṇa, Bhīṣma, Jayadratha, Karṇa, and the other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight and you will vanquish your enemies in battle. Purport. Every plan is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is so kind and merciful to his devotees that he wants to give the credit to his devotees who carry out his plan according to his desire. Life should therefore move in such a way that everyone acts in Krishna consciousness and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of a spiritual master. The plans of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are understood by his mercy, and the plans of the devotees are as good as his plans. One should follow such plans and be victorious in the struggle for existence.
Droṇam cha bhīṣmaṁ cha jayadratham cha karṇam tathā anyān api yodha-vīrān mayā hatāṁs tvam jahi vyathiṣṭhā yudhyasva jetāsi raṇe sapatnān Drona, Bhīṣma, Jayadratha, Karṇa, and other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight, and you will vanquish your enemies in battle. Srila Vyasadeva, Krishna, actually, has taken four very prominent names of Maharathis. They are all Maharathis, in the category of Maharathi. But the first two are the most important names in this list. Drona is a spiritual master, and Bhīṣma is also a spiritual master, a guide, a grandfather, friend to the Pandavas. The Pandavas could spend very little time with their father. Hardly much time. They were very young when Pandu passed away. So Bhīṣma Actually, he also did not marry, took a vow not to. So he took care of the Pandavas, especially the Pandavas, because although Duryodhana and others were there, they were not devotees of the Lord. But the Pandavas, from the very beginning, were very devoted to elders, spiritual master, and such. So he took special care of them. So there was an extremely affectionate bond between Bhīṣma and the Pandavas. Dronacharya taught all the children from the Kuru dynasty. Both the Pandavas and Kauravas were known to be Kuru dynasty, belonging to the Kuru dynasty. Of course, other princes from other smaller kingdoms, they also came to learn from Dronacharya. But of all the students that came to learn the art of war, Arjuna was his favorite. This is tremendous bond. Arjuna was willing to lay down his life for his master. There was an instance where he actually put to risk his own life as a young boy to save his spiritual master, Dronacharya. It happened. So Krishna has named these specifically, these two names, knowing very well that Arjuna has a special affectionate bond of affection for both these great personalities. No doubt they were also extremely powerful in battle. That also is a fact. So if these four are moved out of the way, then there's no one else who could actually lead the Kaurava army. Not anyone else was a match for Arjuna. So, in order to bolster Arjuna psyche, emotion, Krishna is mentioning these four names and others, but they are the most prominent ones. So once they are removed, there should be no great obstruction or hindrance to become victorious. Now, Krishna is telling very plainly, Arjuna, these are people, I have killed them all. This is the second time Krishna is saying this. Right in the beginning, he said that to Arjuna. All these kings and assembled soldiers that you see, Arjuna, they're already dead. I've killed them. It's just a matter of time. And now, Krishna is repeating that this Krishna has destroyed all of them. He simply has to act as Krishna's instrument. Arjuna must act as Krishna's instrument. In doing so, he will certainly be victorious. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is encouraging us to follow this line of action. Life should therefore move in such a way that everyone acts in Krishna consciousness and understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of a spiritual master. The plans of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are understood by His mercy, and the plans of the devotee are as good as His plans. They are good as His plans, as Krishna's plans, the devotee's plan. How is it that they are as good as Krishna's plan? For two reasons. One is that Krishna reveals His plan, what the future outcome is going to be, what strategy Krishna has arranged. And the second is that Krishna never refuses a pure devotee's plan. So for these two reasons, the spiritual master always knows Krishna's plan. So we simply have to humbly submit to the Lord's plan as it comes to us via media, the spiritual master. And that means if we submit to the spiritual master's plan, we shall be also victorious in mastering our material life. This is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Simply fight. Don't think of anything. Don't be disturbed. Don't be disturbed because I have already destroyed them. It's just a matter of taking up your Gandiva bow and arrow and just jump into the fray. And you will vanquish your enemies in battle. So shall all the devotees or all those who follow this plan of Krishna will be able to vanquish the plans of Maya Devi, Mahamaya. They shall be vanquished. Krishna is saying, Dvaiviyesha gunamai, mamo maya durattaya, mameva je prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. Taranti means overcome. Overcome the influence of Mahamaya. So, devotees have to understand certain things, but more important than understanding is reposing one's trust and faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is most important. Everything else is secondary. Everything else. It is bhakti which generates bhakti, gives birth to bhakti. nothing else. We think that sadhana gives birth to bhakti. No. Bhakti gives birth to bhakti. If in our sadhana there is no bhakti, then it is useless labor. Shrama eva hi kevalam. Shrama eva hi kevalam. Our only payment, our only emolument will be our hard endeavor. That's all we shall gain. We will not be able to gain anything positive, only hard labor. Shrama eva hi kevalam. So, it is what we have to understand is the science of bhakti properly. Until and unless we understand the science of bhakti, our focus will be misplaced. Misplaced. To think that I will increase my hearing, chanting, going on pilgrimage, giving in charity, building wells. All these are certainly very noble acts. And if one can afford, then one should not stop these charitable acts. Should not. But that should not be our ultimate focus. And all these acts should be done in concordance with bhakti. Bhakti is simply to surrender wholesale to the Lord. Even if there is no way through some physical action that we could express our bhakti, surrender to the Lord, simply a sincere prayer, a sincere wish. The Lord knows. The Lord knows. And therefore the Lord is encouraging us to always be happy. Should not be morose. Of the 64 limbs of bhakti, there are proscriptions and prescriptions, do's and don'ts. So one of the main don'ts is what we to avoid is constant lamentation. Constant lamentation. Oh, I had so much money, and now I don't. I've lost so much money. How can I regain that? My thoughts are hovering around these things, these points, these topics. Then, of course, nothing is going to happen. Our thoughts and actions should increase our attraction for the Supreme Lord. That is bhakti. The attraction for the Lord. More mood of surrender is required. The Lord is already acting on behalf of Arjuna, even without being asked. In a battle, if the most prominent warriors are destroyed, what better act of support, help, and blessing can there be? If my enemy ranks annihilated, without me not having to make great plans, after all, in the war strategies are very important. Simply being a good fighter is only half the strength I need to win a war. Only half. Similarly, also in our daily life, our full endeavor is only half. The other half is praying for the mercy of the Lord. Then full success will be there. So, Krishna is saying, Arjuna, you simply fight. Don't worry about anything. So, any questions? Sunday question answer session.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dhanyavad. So, for the disciple, what are the symptoms of successfully executing the spiritual master's plans?
Execution requires ability. So not everyone has the ability or has not yet developed the ability. What is required is the full faith and trust in the instructions of the spiritual master. Faith and trust in the spiritual master and his instructions, and try to the best of one's capacity to follow them. The point here is sometimes a disciple may not be able to understand what the spiritual master wants of me. May not be able to understand. Because in the case of Srila Prabhupada and such transcendental personalities, there are 24 hours residing in a spiritual mood. So sometimes there are statements and instructions given by such personalities, liberated souls, transcendentalists, which may take a few things as understood, not going into much detail, self-revealing, because they are on that plane. So many times the instructions are such that the devotee may not understand. He also may not have the opportunity to cross-question the spiritual master, for various reasons. So the disciple has landed himself or herself in a situation where he has received the spiritual master's instruction and simply understood half of what he wanted. Now, with a half understanding of a certain instruction, how will someone be able to successfully execute that? And besides, to execute something, one has to possess that capacity. So execution is not the criteria. The endeavor, enthusiasm, and full faith and trust in the spiritual master. That is needed. That is required. Everything else will follow automatically, because the spiritual master knows the heart of his disciple. And spiritual master will certainly know this. This disciple of mine is sincere. Sincere effort is being made. Then everything will fall into place. Because certainly with our imperfections, it is not possible to execute anything perfectly. But the spiritual master is engaging us in bhakti, not in work. So therefore, the difference between work and bhakti is that the work will certainly be incomplete due to our shortcomings, due to our imperfections. Whereas bhakti is always successful. Anything done with bhakti will always be successful. So therefore the concentration should be in our own attitude and mental makeup.
Thank you, Gurudev. That's encouraging. But when the disciple has the opportunity to ask the spiritual master in case in case he feels that there might be some misunderstandings of the instruction, should he always be eager to clarify and ask?
If that possibility is there, then certainly if the devotee is feeling certain confusion regarding understanding the instruction, then he should ask. But still the fact remains that in the execution is not the main thing. Execution is secondary.
Yes, I understand. Thank you, Gurudev. And then I want to ask, you said that if in our sadhana there is no bhakti, then it's useless labor. So what kind of bhakti in our sadhana can we expect on our level? How does our bhakti look like?
Bhakti is an internal matter. Sadhana is an external matter. Bhakti is completely internal matter. So nobody can know what sort of bhakti we possess, let us say. Quality of our bhakti, nobody can know. Only I can know. Only I myself am aware of the degree of surrender at present I am able to make, and the sincerity in wanting more surrender, wanting to be more surrendered, that is required. That is required. It is faith alone. It is faith alone which fuels bhakti. Faith fuels bhakti, conviction in Krishna, in the process, spiritual master, the scriptures. This does not reflect in our sadhana. Does not. To us it will, but to anyone else it will not. So we have to focus ourselves in raising, increasing, intensifying our faith and surrender. Together it will be bhakti. Surrender and faith, a wonderful amalgamation, will produce bhakti. And that is bhakti. There are not always possible for everyone to execute bhakti. But it is also true that if someone has already executed bhakti in the previous life, just in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, or in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, or in the case of Gajendra, of course, Dhruva Maharaj practiced a lot of sadhana, no doubt. But Gajendra didn't do anything. He was an elephant. How did the Lord appear just for him? He was able to attract. And what attracts the Lord? Bhakti, one of Bhakti's properties, characteristic is that Krishna Akarshani. Krishna Akarshani attracts Krishna. Bhakti is the only thing which attracts Krishna. Nothing else. Not our sadhana, not our studying the Vedas, nothing. We may perform, and that's why what some people think, some devotees have the misconception that simply by chanting, I shall be able to go back home, back to God. But Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami is refuting this. No, that's not true. বহু জন্মে করে যদি নাম সংকীর্তন তবু নাহি মিলে কৃষ্ণর শ্রী ভক্তি প্রেম ভক্তি শ্রী কৃষ্ণর চরণ. বহু জন্মে, one may go on chanting for many lifetimes, but still will not be able to attain love for the lotus feet of Krishna. বহু জন্মে করে যদি নাম সংকীর্তন তবু নাহি মেলে কৃষ্ণর চরণের প্রেম ধন. So we have to understand that bhakti and sadhana are two different things. Till at such point when they merge together, till bhakti merges, sadhana merges into bhakti. Sadhana is not independent. Bhakti is independent. Bhakti is not dependent on anything other than herself. The sadhana is dependent on bhakti. So one has to be able to discriminate and differentiate between these two things. So concentration and focus should be on surrender and faith and trust, not on sadhana. If the faith and trust is strong, sadhana will automatically be of a high quality.
So it is then a sign of faith if one desires to surrender more.
Surrender more, yes. And Krishna should be our focus all the time. For example, Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, in the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, there are so many rules and regulations are given to us. And they have to be followed. The rules and regulations in the scripture shastras must be followed. That is Vaidhi Bhakti. So, Sri Rupa Goswami's question to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, when Mahaprabhu was deliberating on the different levels of bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti, Sadhan Bhakti, Bhav Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. So, Vaidhi Bhakti is a part of Sadhan Bhakti, the beginning. So, all these rules and regulations, Sadhan Bhakti, all the way up to Bhav Bhakti has to follow the rules and regulations. And in the stage of Bhav Bhakti, these rules, following the rules and executing the angas of devotion must be also followed, even in the stage of Rag Bhakti. They should not be abandoned. So, it's saying that of so many rules and regulations are there, how can we follow all of them? Scores and scores and scores of rules and regulations. Proscriptions and prescriptions. So Mahaprabhu quotes a verse from Vishnu Puran. We've heard it many times. Smratavya satatam Vishno Vismatavya nayatuchit Sarva vidhi nishedyor kinkara iti. Kinkara. That always remember Krishna is the prescription and never forget him is the proscription. And these two rules and regulations, these two rules and regulations are to be other like the king, and all the other rules and regulations are kinkaraha, servants. If one can simply follow these two, then one may ignore all other angas of sadhana. Ignore. One should not, but if one does, one's bhakti will not be harmed.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Very good.
Is sadhana is a tool to consolidate bhakti?
Sadhana is supposed to protect us from the influence of the external energy. That is sadhana. To bring us into a life of a regulated lifestyle. That is sadhana.
So sadhana is more of a protective nature than enhancement of bhakti.
Yes.
Mhm.
However, while executing sadhana, for example, while chanting or hearing Harikatha or praying or doing deity worship, meditating, with what purpose am I doing this? That is the main criteria. What is the purpose of my chanting? Why am I chanting? Why am I hearing Harikatha? What is the purpose? If my purpose is to please my spiritual master and the Lord, then it is bhakti. But if I am performing these things for other purpose, anyābhilas, then it is not bhakti. So it is not necessary that chanting is bhakti, hearing Harikatha is bhakti, offering prayers to the Lord is bhakti, meditating. No. If by executing these angas, these limbs of bhakti, my goal is to give happiness to my spiritual master and Supreme Lord, is bhakti. And the other thing is also that, see, there are, even in the 64 limbs that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught Srila Rupa Goswami, the 64 limbs, there are also do's and don'ts. So one of the don'ts is that don't lament. Don't fall victim to lamentation and sorrow, because it does not please Krishna. It does not please the spiritual master. The spiritual master and Krishna, they have revealed the secret, the greatest secret, how to be eternally be happy, Satchit Ananda, to regain our status as Satchit Ananda. So the spiritual master and Krishna are very pleased when the devotee practicing experiences some happiness. And that is therefore that Bhakti Devi, right in the beginning of our spiritual life, as soon as we have taken formal initiation from a bona fide spiritual master, that Kleshagni, reduction of klesha, and Subhada brings auspiciousness and happiness. So if one is all the time morose, then that is not very pleasing to the Lord. The spiritual master is going through so much of hardship. For him, of course, he's always connected with the Lord, but nevertheless, he would rather be in Vrindavan, Mayapur, doing bhajan, kirtan, sankirtan, associating with other great souls and discussing Harikatha. But yet, he, just like Srila Prabhupada, after 9-10 years in Vrindavan, alone, living in Radha Damodar temple, writing his books, meditating, chanting, kirtan, he left Vrindavan. He came to the West, the capital of Maya. Birthplace of demons. Is that not a hardship? And he came to give us the most wonderful gift. And we are still morose. Just the fact that we have come into touch with such a great soul and his words, which has created a revolution in our lives anyway. So why should there be any moroseness? Problems of life will come and they go away. We are such fools and idiots. We keep holding on to the problems to extend their stay and sojourn in our minds and heart. You simply forget them and they're gone. What is that? They would go away anyway. Whether you want it or not, they will go away. Just like whether you want it or not, they have come. Just like suffering comes on its own and it goes away on its own, happiness, material happiness also comes on its own. So, sadhana is fully dependent on bhakti. Bhakti is not dependent at all on sadhana. We can connect the two. That means we can transform sadhana into bhakti. That is possible.
One more question I have. At one point in one of his lectures, Srila Prabhupada highly disapproves of people traveling long distance for working. And then to substantiate that point, he quotes Chanakya Pandit, wherein Chanakya Pandit says that who is happy? And he then goes on to say that those who don't go out of home and those who are not in any kind of debt are the happy people. Can you please say something about that?
Well, you see, it depends on the times. You see, Chanakya Pandit, of course, is a great sage, no doubt. He lived, what, 1500, 1600 years ago? The Mauryas?
Yeah.
So at that time, the lifestyle was completely different. One need not have gone out of the house because there was no question of earning one's living. There was no money involved. It's just barter system. So people were not forced to work. Only in natural calamities was there some problem for food and shelter. Otherwise not. And regarding debt, that of course, in those days, it was certainly, what should I say, a sword hanging over one's head, Damocles sword. But nowadays, you're encouraged to take debts. You go to the bank to take credit. So they're encouraging you. Yeah, okay, you borrow. So you see, it's completely two different.
Actually, Prabhupada is severely criticizing the credit card system.
Of
He
course.
goes on to say about that.
Yes.
And also he actually says that people traveling for hours and hours every day or working, wasting their life. Actually, that was the point he was laying stress on.
Yes.
One more question I have is that, do they chant Harinam in Golok Vrindavan?
They're all the time chanting. They cannot exist. They're breathing. Of course, there's no question of breathing with a spiritual body. But all the time, Krishna is foremost in their mind. And they don't chant as sadhana, like we do here. They chant out of a great joy, remembering their most beloved friend, most dear son, most romantic lover. That's how.
Yeah, actually, one of the verse that Srila Prabhupada quotes, I don't really remember, but the first line is Golokir Premdan Harinam Sankirtan, something like that.
Yes, that is a song from Srila Narottam Das Thakur.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So Harinam Sankirtan is going on in Golok also, but the mood is different.
It is going more in Svetadvip, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's half of Golok Vrindavan. That is the counterpart. And in Vrindavan also, like, different names. And also, they are not simply singing the names, they are also singing Krishna's heroic acts on earth, when he's on earth. He killed so many demons in doing that. So they are singing that also in the spiritual world, remembering all that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
So regarding the purpose with which we perform sadhana, we hear so often how important it is to please the spiritual master and Krishna with our devotional activities. But is it not that some kind of realization is needed to really be able to feel this desire to please in the heart, to really be able to understand what the spiritual master is doing for us, what precious gift he's giving us? It is not something that I can just push a button and it happens. So how about this really having this desire to please in the heart? How can we enhance this, make it real?
Well, that might take some time, but first of all, realization and appreciation and gratitude must fill our hearts. Oh, my spiritual master has come to such great lengths, and simply that, with any sincere thought, if I sincerely am grateful to my spiritual master, the Paramatma is there, he knows. He knows how sincere we are in regards to our appreciation of our spiritual master. Everything is noted, everything. Nothing can go unnoticed. So even if we are not able to say in the same degree to reciprocate, reciprocation can take place bodily, physically, that is, mentally, and with words. So with words and mentally, we don't require any time, place, and circumstance. It can be done any time and all the time. The physical part of the execution will have to depend on certain circumstances. But the deep feeling of gratitude and appreciation in the heart is certainly will be noted in the absolute plane. In the spiritual plane, these thoughts these will certainly reach the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and because the Lord also is very pleased when anyone appreciates. After all, it is Krishna who has sent these Mahatmas. It is on his behest that pure devotees descend from the spiritual realm. So when these pure devotees and representatives of the Supreme Lord are appreciated and praised and glorified, the Lord feels very, very pleased, very satisfied. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that the father is more pleased when his son or daughter is praised than when he is praised. So if Krishna so desires, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada blesses us, we shall certainly get to hear Harikatha very soon. I thank all of you for your patient hearing. Let us once again offer our most humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Krishna Dvaipaya and Srila Vyasadeva, at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and his beloved friend and devotee Sri Arjuna, and our most humble respects to the book Sri Bhagavad-gītā As It Is, and at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.